The biggest story to come out of South African football over the past few days has to be Mbokazi. TLB has reportedly joined Chicago Fire in the MLS for a reported fee of approximately 51 million rand, $3 million, and is set to join the team after the AFCON. So apparently everything has been done. He was in America for the medicals, and Pirates has accepted, and everything is done and dusted. There's three things I want to speak about when we speak about this thing. Number one, Pirates. The timing doesn't make sense for me. Sometimes, Barry, when you've got an investment, you hold that investment knowing that it's going to grow. Sometimes you hold that investment, sometimes knowing that in the next couple of months there's going to be some things that happen that increase that investment. So it doesn't make sense for Mbokazi to leave Pirates right now because, again, 20-year-old captain of Pirates, about to go into an AFCON with a strong Bafana team that is touted to do very well in the tournament. And of course, next year, June, July, he'll be in America anyway because that's the World Cup. Again, as one of the players that's going to be, it seems to be a linchpin player for Hugo Bruce for the next coming year. Surely you hold on to that and you say, you know what, guys, his value can only go up from here. And we'll see what happens after a World Cup. Then we can entertain any offers to let him go, right? Then maybe we can get even more money. If you're getting 51 million for a player who's only been playing first team football for, a year? Then surely you can get a lot more once he's progressed the way that he has, right? So that's why it doesn't make sense to me. It doesn't make sense to me that this is the cash grab that Pirates is going for. Now, in Pirates' defense, they're also a team that has had a couple of players that they had very high hopes on and maybe held on thinking that the value would carry on increasing. And now they're finding themselves scrounging around to try and find a deal. And I'm talking about Mfukeng here, who probably had an extremely high valuation coming towards the end of last year. But now, because of how he's fallen out of the national team and out of Pirates, obviously there's injuries that have played a role there. Now, you sit with a player that maybe you cannot sell for that much money. So the asset that they were holding, right, that they thought was going to go for a lot of money, maybe doesn't anymore because of the things that happen. And maybe the risk is, what happens if he has a PAP AFCON? What happens if he has a PAP World Cup? What happens if he gets injured in the interim? What happens if, as Pirates does, they replace him? They bring in somebody or they find somebody who's better, or Silepe puts his hand up and he's paired with Sesane and they just look good. What happens then, right? So you could argue that they've seen with Nkota, you can have a year, quickly sell him, get some money in and live your life. And maybe that's the lesson that Pirates has learned in terms of taking these deals on, right, for Mbokazi. So on that front, you can maybe understand it. The second part that I want to speak about is a lot of people are saying, no, but the money, the boy must cash out for his money. And this is where you have to balance career and quick money. Guys, quick money finishes now. Quick money, you think that you're making the move that's right, and then it turns out that it's the worst place. I mean, to bring in an example, most of us here have had a situation where you just finished school, you scrounge around, you get your first job, the second offer comes in, maybe the third offer comes in, and you go to that place because they've got the benefits, the medical aids, the gyms, the what. And the environment iyapeta, and you find yourself 3-4 years down the line thinking, why did I do this? Why am I here? Right? Quick money is not always the best thing. And I'm not saying that Chicago is quick money. But what I'm saying is, if we're focusing on the money and we're saying the boys must feed their families, how many of the guys that we've seen go overseas, right? They go to the wrong team, they come back very quickly because it's not working out, and then now you don't know what's happening. Now their careers are gone, and instead of having a 10-15 year career where you might not be at the top, you might not be at the top level of the earnings, but you're earning enough to keep it for 15 seasons. Now that becomes 4 or 5 years. Now they come back to SA. Now you have to go play for let me not be disrespectful, but you have to go play for teams that maybe you never would have thought you were playing for. I mean, Keegan Dolly finds himself in the first division. I believe he's still at Cape Town City. So you sit there and you go, this idea that all money is good money. Just ask Cassius Mailula. Just ask the planning. Just ask all of the stuff that people were questioning him about when he left. Gets to Toronto FC, overshadowed by Bernadeschi, and I'm forgetting the other player. And now he sits in a place where, look, he's bouncing around. He's in Belgium right now trying to play. And he's not getting game time. So not all money is good money. Now, to be fair, you could make the argument that rather cash out than you find yourself being a Percy Tau, who for all intents and purposes made the perfect move. Brighton called. He answered, he had to go through Belgium, but that path was so long that by the time he got to Brighton, they had fired the coach that signed him. And the new coach didn't want him and he found himself bouncing around. So maybe there isn't a good answer in terms of the money, but if you can make the money and you can keep your family happy, maybe then you sacrifice your career. Which brings me to the third and most important thing that I want to speak about. The most interesting thing about Mbokazi's career is that it has been one of the most fortuitous, luckiest, amazing stories. Because like I said, this man barely has a year of first team football under his belt. Barely has a year. He's gone from a DDC prospect to becoming a starter for Orlando Pirates, to becoming captain of Orlando Pirates, to then becoming one of the key players or touted to be a key player at Bafana, all within a year of play, which is incredible. He's talented. But let's do that again. He comes from the DDC. He falls into a Pirates that is having injury problems and needs to call him up. Not saying he's not talented. He falls into a Pirates where there might be a little bit of a leadership vacuum. Umayela had just retired. You've got Tim who are being moved out of the club. You've got all of these things, and he falls into captaincy. Then Bafana has similar problems at the back, and he falls into Bafana. That is a lot of falling. And my worry is that there's no control over where he's going, what the pathway is. And I don't believe there's been planning enough to make sure that this move is the best for him in his career, in his growth, in his development. I don't think Pirates has thought about that with the money that's coming in. I don't think his representatives have thought about that with the money that's coming in. So it begs the question that do we plan for our players to get to the top of football? And this is players in general, because like I said, Cassius Mailula is in the same boat. There's other players who we had such great hopes for, but they just never take the next step. They never follow through. And I wonder if it's because nobody plans. I mean, I don't think anybody could have planned for what Mbokazi did right now and how he grew and how the importance of what he's doing is to the country, to the club. I don't think anybody planned for that. I don't think himself, I don't think he's had a moment to sit down and reflect on all of the things that are happening. And now you throw him into a place where he's going to Chicago, he's going to be in that MLS. The prospects of moving from the MLS to elsewhere, I don't know if they're that high. Best case scenario, you become, you become the boy who's playing that side, right? Who is a staple. Worst case scenario, you find yourself playing in Vietnam. Right? Because coach and things changed. So I am worried that we're not doing enough to make sure that our players have careers and our players become the best that they can be. I'm looking for Mbokazi to be a world-beating defender. I'm not looking for Mbokazi to be just another great player. Because we don't have that many world-beating players that, as South Africans, we have developed over the past few years. And the ones that we've had, we've lucked out on. And this is again where we have the conversation about luck. You've lucked into all of these things. At what point do you have the control? And do our agents, do our managers, do our teams look out for the well-being of these players and their futures? Or is it really just the case again that we have our kids, these talented youngsters, right, going with just their talent into the world? Remember, he still has to develop. Already we saw some of the weaknesses when he was playing for Bafana, when he was playing some of those World Cup qualifiers. You saw some of the weaknesses start to be exposed, coming to the red cards, coming to all of that stuff. There's a lot that still needs to be done with Mbokazi. Now, to be fair, he's going to a Chicago Fire team that is being coached by Greg Berhalter. Greg Berhalter was the U.S. men's national team coach, the top American coach, and one of the things that he was lauded for in his time was trusting the youth, right? He's the guy that brought in Abu Pulisic, Abu Altidore, and all of those guys in the time that he was there, and it's being said that he loves that thing. He loves developing youth. He loves them. He's also going to a Chicago Fire team that's not necessarily the best team in the MLS. I think they're closer to the bottom when you look at logs. And they don't have the same star players, that former star players that land in the MLS when they retire. So he's probably going to get game time when he plays there. So it could be still a good move for him going forward, but it still begs the question that are we planning for our best players, for the good of our best players? Are we planning to make sure that by the time he's 22, these are the milestones that have been hit? Because around the world, Messi is playing Champions League football at 16, 17. Mbappe is breaking into League One at AS Monaco when he's 16, right? By the time they hit a certain point, a couple of years have gone by, they're experienced campaigners. By 20, Lionel Messi has played so much football at the highest level. Lamine Yamal has played so much football at the highest level. Are we doing a disservice by not having a through line for these players? Because, like I said, I don't think any of what Mbokazi's success was planned to play out like this. And when you don't plan, what happens? Remember the example I used about jumping jobs? How many of us have gone into a job and you look at the guys and you hear the stories on your first day and you're like, wow, if I had known this, I wouldn't have signed that contract. How many times do you walk into a place and you go, oh, wow, that conversation we had was very different. Nabo Mailula. Nabo Parker, Nabo Toli. All of these players who have gone that side and came back and it was like, hi guys, there was nothing like I thought it was. And again, it prompts that deeper conversation about the management of these players, the agents that run these players' lives. Are you just looking at the numbers and your eyes are getting big? And do we have the requisite experience in taking players that side? Now, I've spoken before on the channel about the difference between our thought processes and our results and our rewards, what we enjoy, versus, let's say, Western Cape that has sent a lot of people over. The colored community has sent a lot of people over because it feels like they've got a different idea of what football is. And should we be borrowing from that? You know, you look at a Chandre Campbell that went through, and I know it's not Western Cape, but they've went through that Gavin Hunt pipeline where Gavin Hunt said, I'm creating players that are going to go overseas. He finds himself in Belgium at the right age, right? He's now going to make debuts, Copa Europa and all of that stuff in the year that he's been there. You look at Tylon Smith from DDC directly to QPR. I'm not saying that it's good, but I'm saying that at least he's in a space where he's very close to the top. You look at Abo Lyle Foster, Abo Stephen Pinar, Abo Penny McCarthy. What is it about their planning, their approach, how they are sold, that is making them more wanted than Mfukeng? That is making them more attractive to teams? Over Abo Mfukeng, over Abo Lodge, over those type of players. And I know we're branching into something else, but these are the conversations we're meant to be having about our youth, our talent, and what we want from them. What is the line from DDC to Champions League medal? How do you create another Benny? How do you create another Lucas Khateb? How do you create another Ri? Because up to this point we haven't, and I believe it's because, again, we're lacking into all of these things. I think we need a concerted effort from SAFA, from the PSL, from the agents, from everybody, where you plan and you say, these are the kids that we're supposed to make them, we're supposed to know where they're going. We're supposed to make those pipelines, make those connections, if it means we're making the phone calls. A lot of the stories of yesteryear about players that have gone overseas is because somebody made a phone call. I remember when Gavin was speaking about, Coach Hunt was speaking about Ubo and Kumalo, and he said, we had a relationship with Tottenham. And I was sitting with the guys and I said, oh, you're looking for a centre back? Nangumuntu. Aboru, they went to go fetch Ufil Masinga. And then we're in conversation with the club. The club was like, no, actually, there's a centre back you can take with. Do we have those things running right now? And are we at a disservice for not doing that? I think for me, I'm tired of watching our football be hit and miss, be lucky, be, the player had such a good temperament, the player he made all the right choices, the player did whatever, instead of saying that the league, that the teams, that the management looked after the player. That's what scares me most about Mbokazi, because he's lucked his way into so many great situations. And I'm not saying luck because he's not talented. He's lucked his way and jumped a lot of people. He jumped all of the under-20s. That under-20 team, bachampe bonke to get into Bafana, bachampe bonke to get into the first team of Pirates. The problem is at some point that stops happening. Even just that adversity of what happens now, what happens now, like Urile is at a point where it's like, what happens now when I'm on the bench, Abu Mureme on fire? How do I get over that? Abu Tito in a place where they have to figure that out. He's going to be doing that in Chicago, in the Windy City. The culture clashes, the weather. Blom spoke about how cold it gets. All of those things. Abu Casillas, when they got there, they had flu for the whole time. There's going to be a bunch of adversity thrown at a boy who is a year out. And I don't know if he's ready. I don't know if we know what it means to get ready. I don't know if the people that are supposed to care. That is my worry about Mbokazi. But hopefully, he's strong. Hopefully, he continues on. Hopefully, he becomes the first to make the jump from MLS to a top 5 league. Let's hope. But it's kind of sad that we have these conversations after everything is done, instead of making sure that we're looking after these players now. And it goes for Abo Obrigado, it goes for Abo Mdu, it goes for Puso Ditejane, it goes for all of these players. Have we created the right structure, scaffolding, roots for them to make it? Look at that under-20 team. How many of them are going to become big deals tomorrow? Or you're going to watch a bunch of has-been talent that was incredible at some point fall out. I've said before, South Africans, we have incredible raw talent. When you put raw talent versus raw talent, there's very few countries that beat us. That's why we've always done well at the youth levels. But when you have to take that talent and make it something else, that's where we often fall out. And that's our big weakness, which is something I'd love to see fixed, and I hope is not repeating with Mbokazi. Hopefully this move doesn't take him out of Bafana. Hopefully this move doesn't take him out of going to the World Cup, because you know Bruce and how strong he's been about the MLS. And he's criticized some of the leagues and he's criticized some of the moves. Hopefully we're not losing another player like we did Abo Mailula. Guys, don't forget to like, share, comment, and subscribe, and tell me what you think in the comments. Remember, I'm not here to be right. I'm just here to ask some of the questions that we don't ask in real life and have conversations that we don't have. That is what this platform is for. So if you can contribute, please contribute. But then if you can't, please like, share, comment, subscribe. Let's get these conversations as far as possible. And let's have the conversations ourselves. So I look forward to see what you guys are going to be saying in the comments. Let's take it from there. Thank you guys for joining me. I'll see you on the next one.